Hello, you beautiful people. I am Anthony White, the Orange Tie Guy, and I want to talk to you about celestial dating. But there's a reason why you may not have a date, or you're not being successful at dating. It's interesting because for me, I think I have so much information in my head that I have to put it down on paper. One of the biggest, I guess, hindrances and or problems is that I have so much information. And I mean, I've got, folders full of information. Let me move my mail off to the side, because I mean, I've got more, you know, notes upon notes and all of this stuff. But one of the biggest issues, I think, is the ultimate concept of you. You're the problem, you're the reason. So, what do you have to do to improve or increase, or I guess you could say resolve the problem of not having dates? Well, you got to fix you, right? And some people may not like that answer, or they're like, okay, that's too general, pass. Yeah, no. What it is it's ultimately you got to think about how you approach things, right? I think it's funny because Hollywood can kind of give us some perspective, right? They'll add truth, they'll give you a nugget of truth kind of in the center of like comedy or suspense or action or whatever will kind of reel us in, right? But it has to be based off of something solid, right? I mean, you think about way long time ago, Armageddon, right? It was entertaining, but it's the idea of, okay, well, an asteroid's going to come and destroy the world kind of a thing. So we've got to get some people out there to do that and or to fix that or resolve it or whatever. Well, we've got to have miners. We have to this, all these other things. Well, what's the hardcore centerpiece of the main character of that, which I think is Bruce Willis, is that he wants to save his daughter, right? He wants to make sure she lives, even though he sacrifices himself. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. But the concept of it is this idea of what is it that's in our mindset. I remember a couple of movies where ultimately they've just ultimately decided, you know what? I don't care. Meaning, I don't care what other people think. I'm tired of holding on to this fear. What's kind of holding me back? I need to face this. Well, it's kind of in the same thing when it comes to relationships and dating. It's the idea that you've got to face your problems. You got to face your fears. You got to recognize and identify with yourself and say, okay, how do I do this? How do I do this? Well, let me tell you how. What it is you got to look at you and you got to decide, I like you. I like me. I can see in a picture like right behind my camera, on my big old screen back there, I can see myself, but you look at yourself and you say, you know what? I like you. Like for me, the Orange Tie Guy, right? I like you, Anthony. I accept you. In fact, I don't just like you, I love you. But here's what's interesting is a lot of people can't say that about themselves. They have this hard time recognizing or identifying with it. It's interesting because it's almost like our internal truth is ultimately holding us back. And it's like our weaknesses, right? What are we deficient at? Or what is it that we don't like about ourselves or whatever it is, right? It's interesting because us guys, we're attracted to women and it's usually physical, right? It's funny because I have a lot of mentors and one of them, he's like, it's boobs, simple and straight. And it's like, okay, to put it bluntly, and he's someone who is just straight up about that. And he's like, what's interesting is us fat guys, and thankfully, I'm trimming down a little bit of my COVID fat, but he comes down to it and he says simple and straightforward. He says, you know what? If you're a fat guy and you're looking for a hot wife or a woman, guess what? She ain't going to go for a fat guy. So you got to be a hot guy, physical body, stuff like that. Fat girls, guess what? You ain't going to get a skinny guy or something. Same thing when it comes to our self-esteem, right? If we do not like ourselves internally, if we're not actually happy, right, by ourselves, meaning that we don't need approval from other people on social media, or we don't need to, have those comfort foods. I think about the Nutty Professor. Eddie Murphy does a great job when he's, the big fat, professor, and he's eating a tub of ice cream and he's like, he's eating his feelings, right? I've been there. I do that, sometimes, or have done that, I should say. But it's this concept for you to be able to say, okay, what am I going to do so that I can attract like person, right? If it's physical, right? I got to be in shape and it's awesome. I was listening to Patrick Bet David, and he was talking about his relationship with his wife, and he says we just live, 1 year at a time. He's like, when we were together, previous to marriage, he's like, or I think he said when we got married, he's like, yep, we're just gonna evaluate this 1 year. This will work for a year. And I thought it was interesting because I was like, whoa, you're just telling your wife that you're marrying, that you're only going to stick with her for a year? He's like, yep. And it's just like 1 year at a time, right? And ultimately, it just renews after a year, even after having babies and stuff like that. It's just, nope, next year. And it's cool because it's almost like their anniversary is this reevaluation. It's like, you know what? We'll be together again. But here's what's interesting. He talked about it and he says, you know what? She's physically appealing. He's like, I got to be the same. I got to do that. Here's what's crazy. People don't like to hear this. They don't like it. In fact, they don't want to hear it at all. Most people don't like the fact that they have to face themselves. I think it's Harry Potter, right? How when Harry is supposedly killed by Voldemort, right? And then he sees in this big old white thing, this decrepit little decaying thing in the corner, which is, I guess, a piece of Voldemort or something that, is in Harry or something that Voldemort had killed a piece of himself in. Anyway, but the whole idea of this, we have in our subconscious minds, our unconscious minds, whatever it is, we have things that we want to do. We have things we want to be, person we want to be, and we hold ourselves back. And we don't do that. And we don't become that. And it's the fact that we're always living in the past, right? The people that are being held back, it's like they're have this big old chain, and I think about this with like Superman, right? Superman's hauling this big old massive chain, and he's pulling this big old ship up to shore or something. But it's this concept that we are trying to be like this strong person carrying all his baggage. The moment we let go of our past and we're like, you know what? Yeah, I used to have an eating problem. I used to have a pornography problem. I used to have, a profanity problem. I used to have these problems, right? I used to, get physically agitated and punch holes in the walls or whatever it is, whatever your problem is, it's identifying it, saying, you know what? This was a problem. I want to address it, acknowledge it exists, right? Because I think about, what is it, AA? Yeah, Alcoholics Anonymous. Anyway, they talk about their past issues and they say, I recognize that that existed. And I recognize that that's a part of who I was. But then it's like, you know what? I'm moving forward. I've been this many days sober or whatever. You got to look to the future. It's focusing on that, but living in the now. Meaning we recognize and say, you know what? This is my flaw. This is where I'm at. This is what I want to do, or this is what I want to fix. So I got to tell you, your remedy, right? The reason why you're not getting dates, the reason why they're not being successful is you're not living in the now. You're thinking about stuff like, what if she or he finds out about this? Or what if? What if a jet engine falls from the sky? Yeah, so be it, right? What if, and I mean, fill in all the hypotheses that in there, and you can fill in that blank, and it's this concept, if you live in the what if world, you don't want to leave your home, right? You're like terrified of everything around you, and it's like, I'm not going to go anywhere. Well, here's what's fascinating. You're doing that in a relationship. You're going nowhere slowly. And it's interesting because in this process, once you kind of, oh my goodness, yeah, I got to resolve this issue. I got to become more. I've got to do more. I've got to, it's like, wait, no, I've not got to, I'm doing. I'm going to. Yeah, I'm going to. And then you start to, make a list. And, I got so many lists and stuff like that. But, you pull out stuff and you're like, yep, I'm going to do this. Okay, yeah, I'm going to do this. And you start to document and you start to live your life one day at a time. And you're excited for the next day. And then you get even more excited and you're like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm so going to do this. And the moment you decide that you want to face fear, doubt, anxiety, whatever you want to call it, right? Face, whether it's the past, right? I've been divorced. Okay, you own it. Now let go of it. I put on my status as single. I'm not going to be labeled as divorced because that would be me labeling myself. I was married once, didn't work, it ended. Now I'm single. I'm looking for my eternal companion, somebody who wants to share eternity with me, right? And maybe I'll take, Patrick Bet-David's, approach, and 1 year at a time have a companionship inventory and reassess it again and say, where are we at? You want to do this for another year? Yeah, for the rest of eternity. Awesome. Do that. But it's this concept of I'm living now. Instead of, okay, well, what if we want to do this? And if we. No. Focus on you first, because you're going to attract you. Simple enough. Here was what's fascinating. If you don't like the people you're dating, it means you don't like you. Ever thought about that? If you don't like the people you're dating, or I would even say attracting, you don't like you. So for me, don't get me wrong, this is not a blanket 100% pure, gold, platinum, titanium. No. But it's a concept to be able to internalize into your mind and to be able to say, what is it that I don't like about myself? Because I got to tell you, there are those moments where I am in a, group of a lot of people, and I got to tell you, ladies are attracted to me. And it's this kind of buff, and it's like, you're the man. I don't, drink the Kool-Aid or anything, but it's like, I don't know what's happening, but I'm on my game. Cool, that works. But it's interesting because at that moment, do I do much about it? Do I take those open doors? Do I approach it? Or are those other times where nobody's paying attention to me and I'm like, give me attention, anybody, I can take anybody. And then guess what? You get the people you don't want, and they'll get to you because they sense that insecurity. They sense, and I don't know if it's like dogs and pheromones or, whatever it is or something like that. And but they're like, oh my goodness, like I can go over there and I can, latch on. It's like these, I don't know what they are, koalas. Is that what they are? That like attached to trees and they hold onto them and stuff and they just turn their head, so to speak. Anyway, it's like a koala, right? They just kind of latch onto you. But here's what's interesting. You got to fix you first. It's you. And then the moment you identify and recognize, and don't get me wrong, I got a whole coaching on this in and of itself, by itself. It's this fact that you got to recognize and own and love you. And if you don't love that piece about you, just like any weed, you got to dig it up by the roots and you got to pull it out. Because if you don't, it's just going to come right back up. And that's in an internal thing. I've worked on so many things when my dad passed away and when my mom was by herself and when I had kind of stepped in to be the man of the house, if you will, but it wasn't really my house, it was her house, and it was just like this whole process, right? I recognized a few things. One of them is I had to address a lot of issues that I had, whether it was from my childhood or relationships that I had, that was clear as a bell for me, but I had to find out, where did it come from? Where did this start as a seed, and how has it like flourished into this massive weed where I can grab that sucker almost like a tree trunk and rip it out of the ground? And I got to use a lot of force to do that. So sometimes people need a coach, right? Sometimes they'll come to me and say, hey, Anthony, here's my problem. Here's my issues. Great. That's my whole point and purpose as a life coach, is to do that. Sometimes you have to have a friend or a parent, right? Somebody else, someone to listen to your problems. Sometimes maybe you just got to do a post, right? What's interesting to me is it seems like I'm looking at all these single sites and everybody's like, always like, well, and it just sounds like they're, I don't know, beaten down is the word, right? I want somebody confident. Ladies, I know you do. Men, I know you do too. Somebody who knows who they are and owns it, recognizes and says, you know what? This is who I am, and I love who I am, and I accept who I am. So I'm facing the world straightforward. Now, don't get me wrong. We have those days that we just are down, but when we are proactive about our lives, when we're proactive about ourselves, we say, you know what? No, yeah, I'm prepping this day. I served a mission. It was interesting because every day that we went outside, we knelt down and prayed every time we left the apartment. And it's interesting because it's this proactive approach. I would offer this one piece of advice. Proactively make it an effort that you are going to be in the now and you're going to be positive. You're going to be the orange tie guy as I preach it. Optimistic, receptive, attractive, nurturing, genuine, enthusiastic. Have those features. Thought investment. There was a reason why I'm the thought investment encourager. You think and you say, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to have a great day. Even though it's raining outside, even though, my internet's out, even though this is going to be awesome. I now have approached life, because it used to be rainy days were those dark, oh, I can't go out and play, and it was all these bad things. As soon as it starts to rain, I was like, I'm gonna change this. It's gonna be a great day. Then I started to play in the rain. And then I started to live in the rain. Like I was in Hawaii for a time, and for those years that I was out there to school, it was interesting because it rained a lot, Out in Pennsylvania, it rained a lot. And it was just this switch that I had to consciously do until it became an unconscious thing where it's like, when it rains, I love the smell. I love everything about it. Do this for you. You got to love you. Because if you don't love you, you're not enabling or allowing others to love you. And if they actually express genuine love to you, you think it's patronizing. Or you're like, no. I'm going to end with this story. I'm going to call her May. And because that's a great name for me. And it's dear to my heart. So May, and we'll talk about the month of May. It's funny, April, May, female names. Anyway, maybe I should name a son September. That would be cool. Anyway, so when it comes down to it, that'd be years off, and I doubt my future bride will allow that to happen. But it's this concept of, I would always offer these awesome, optimistic, and I guess uplifting, valid perspectives to May as we would coach, and she would knock them down like they were invalid. No, you're just being nice. And I almost it was driving me nuts, and I almost wanted to grab her face and be like, stop! You need to see this. And the problem is that somebody can't tell you. You have to know. And when you know, and somebody gives that added benefit, you have this ability to say, thank you. I appreciate that. You don't say anything like, well, nah, stop. And it's funny because people are like, oh, well, I don't want to be prideful or whatever. Bullcrap. That's not pride. It's called selfish. Simple and straight. You don't value you, and therefore the value somebody gives to you, you see it as dross. It's waste. It's compost that has no nutrients. So it's just... So here's the problem. Address it. First and foremost. The reason why you're not getting success in dates or relationships or anything is, honestly, you got to love you. You got to have a relationship with yourself. It's funny because I hear this term a lot out in the world of, I should say my professional world. It's like, own you. Yeah, you do you. These phrases, I think it's interesting, but be yourself, but own it. And if you don't like that piece that's about you, guess what? Change it. You want to do it? It's line upon line, here a little, and there a little. That's it, right? How can you make an entire, I've seen these masterpieces where they take, I think, crayons and they melt them and they just put one dot at a time. One dot at a time. And then you see this massive collage, right? It's kind of like, I don't even know, like artists and stuff like that. I'd say a Picasso or something, but it's just this concept of one dot at a time. That's all you got to do. I'm going on 19 minutes here. I've got some information to do. I'm creating some courses because I'm seeing so many things, and I'm going to call it Celestial Dating Secrets. And when it comes down to it, and I'll actually offer this to you guys first, but it's just a free, webinar that I'm going to do. But here's the thing. We don't recognize how much power we have. And this is not telling or demanding or commanding or forcing anybody else. When you actually know you actually illuminate. And I'm not talking about the lights that are shining on me, right? I'm talking about that you shine and it's attractive. Light cleaves to light. They want it. They want to be together. And it's interesting because even people that are in the dark want to come to the light, but they can't endure it because if they're not shining themselves, if they don't give themselves permission to shine, they won't. That's the fascinating truth. But you got to be you. Be you. Shine. Own it. Love it. I got to tell you, that will change your entire life. I'm Anthony White, the Orange Tie Guy. I hope you enjoyed this little time with Friday Night with Anthony White. Sorry I couldn't do it a little longer. Maybe you guys like the little 20-minute one, but maybe it's a little better this way. But I hope you are having a good night. And if you need to shift that thinking, get up, go into the bathroom or look in a mirror and say, I'm going to have an awesome night. And if you're feeling inside, no, because of this, address it. Acknowledge it. Write it down. Put it on a big old whiteboard and say, this is why I can't have a good night. And then you can resolve it. But thank you for watching. Have a glorious evening after Friday Night with Anthony White.